Indianna Bell and Josiah Allen, it's a pleasure to meet you both today.
Pleasure to meet you too.
Thanks for your time.
I like to kick off these kind of chats with filmmakers with a congratulations, not just for this film in particular, but more than that, for actually getting a film off the ground in the first place. Congratulations on just that fact.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
It's been a long journey, but yeah, we're really proud and excited to have it finally released into the world and
Very
for people
exciting.
to see it.
For both of you, this is your first feature film, am I right?
Yeah.
How does it feel now that you're looking back at the result, at the distribution element of it all? How does it feel getting that after all that hard work?
It's a massive relief. I
Yeah.
think that's the main thing we've talked about a lot is
Yeah.
that it's really exciting, when you get into these particular festivals and you're getting good feedback and things like that. But it's also just such a huge relief because of the fact that when you're doing low budget filmmaking and, your first time filmmakers, you have to call in a lot of favors. And so we had a lot of people help us out on this film who just put in crazy hours and such hard work, just really went out of their way to help us. So we felt like a responsibility to try to make the film as good as it possibly could be, from within our power, so that as many eyes as possible could see their hard work. So I think it's just been a sense of like, relief, when we got the first, we got the Tribeca premiere, we went, okay, we can breathe. We just wanted everyone who worked on it to feel really proud and feel like that their hard work would be seen. So I think that's how we're feeling at the moment.
Because the way that, this kind of size film gets made, in our case, how ours got made, there's no guarantee of distribution. There's no guarantee of that validation for all the people who are doing hard work. So all the crew were just passionately doing so much work just for the love of making films. But you obviously hope and kind of pray that will happen. And so we couldn't be happier that everyone gets to see their hard work.
Now, looking at the overall concept and the screenplay development in the first place, how did this come about? Indianna, I know that you wrote the screenplay, and I read that you were one of the primary elements was at a small budget. That was one of the manufacturing elements.
Yeah, exactly. So we had been down the route before, as most, new filmmakers do, of you have this great idea for a short film, and then when it comes to actual practicalities of doing it, you kind of dig yourself in a hole, and then you end up with a result that is potentially not, where you wanted it to be. So we learned that really early on when we were just doing little sketches and things like that at uni, and we learned that you really have to, from the script stage, write to a budget and something that's really achievable, so that you can then push the limits of that within that frame, if that makes sense. So we knew we wanted to do a feature film. We knew we had not very much money to do it, so we kind of went, okay, let's create something that is in a single location, that only has two actors that we've worked with before, who we know work really well together and are really keen. If we shoot it in one location, then we don't have as many, trucking fees of moving this over here and that over there. And if it's in a studio, then we can leave everything set up. And if we can leave everything set up, then we can shoot for as many hours in the day as possible, and get the most out of it. So that's kind of where we came from. And so it wasn't like this beautiful, organic, I had this conversation that sparked an idea. It was like a really practical, writing challenge of okay, one location. We know what two actors we'd love to work with. What are the dynamics of these two people when you put them together? Who could they be? What's the most interesting or tense? And then, we threw around lots of different locations. What could we actually practically build for not very much money? And that's kind of how we ended up here. So it's not like a beautiful, organic process. It's like a restriction.
Which is a really interesting exercise to do, and was kind of like a really intensive extra film school.
Totally.
Which we got so much out of it.
I think that's a great lesson for a lot of up and coming filmmakers out there. It's great to be imaginative, but it's also important to have logistics in mind from the very beginning, so you don't set yourself up for some kind of financial failure down the end, which then takes a toll on the imaginative goal that you had in the first place.
That's right. Or just not making the film. That's the trick. We also didn't want to get stuck in here's our concept that's too big to do, we'll go around and pitch it. Hasn't happened. Okay, we'll reassess and we'll go again. And the next year and the next year, we really wanted to just get out and make something as quickly as possible. And Indianna wrote the script, and we were filming like under 4 months later.
Was this always the plan that you would both direct, one of you would write, one of you would edit, or did this kind of evolve more organically over the process?
It's kind of just happened by nature of what we've done in the past. We love co-directing. I originally was kind of coming from more of a visual side. Indianna was coming from having written it. So, and her strength was, you know, just working really well with the actors. And that was during university. And we've kind of come together. And now it's kind of an unspoken thing that we have where we just have the same taste. So it's way more fun to do it together, and it just takes the pressure off. You're just making something with your friend. So we're kind of always going to do it that way. Indianna is the writer, so she was always going to write it. And then the editing it just kind of naturally ended up happening. We didn't actually go into it necessarily going, like I'll edit it. And it was still like every facet of filmmaking. It was still a big collaboration. You know, Indy's there every day. Like we're sitting next to each other every day. So, you know, it's very much still, you know, co-editing that. But yeah, it's just by nature of, if those are the things we can do. So on something of this scale, you know, you want to invest in amazing creatives who have the super strengths that you just can't do at all. And for this size, we just knew we would work for our own production for the cheapest, as in nothing. So yeah. And again, that was all part of the incredible learning kind of curve throughout all this, is that the experience of, you know, you having written the film and us editing it ourselves is something that we'll take forwards. And when we are, you know, working with an editor in the future, we've had that experience of editing something, and we know the positives and the negatives of that. And it would have also been great to work with an editor, but I think for this one, it was just, again, I'm going to go back to that film school thing. It was just a fantastic way to learn how to structure a film as you go.
Well, I'm interested in what you kind of, for both of you, what caught you off guard, or what did you find was something that, wow, this really sucks. If only people talked about this in film school more, and we had no idea that this kind of thing happens. Was there anything like that? Any of those hard lessons learned?
Well, there were some, like creatively, I definitely feel like there were some things that turned out way more difficult than I thought they would be. Like, for example, for the shoot, it was wonderful shooting in one location. It was so easy, and we could get the most out of the shooting day. But I did not realize how difficult having something set in one location would be in post-production and in the edit. There's a few reasons. One, it just drives you crazy because you're sitting in front of a computer every day looking at, you know, it's
the
like
the same room.
Editing drives you crazy anyway. But then when it's the same environment, oh yeah, that was one thing. But the main thing was that when it's set in one location, and it's set in continuous time, we did not realize how much of an impact that would have on our capability, our editing possibilities. Because, you know, normally when we've made short films before, and when you have different scenes in different locations and that typical cinema language, you can really work some magic in the edit that the audience will never pick up on. So you can cut an entire scene, you can cut lines and some, you know, oh, we don't need her driving to the office, she just appears at the office, we don't need her walking in the foyer, cut all that. And you can really get the film flowing, and, you know, it gives yourself really these really obvious musical cues. Okay, so we're transitioning to a new scene here, cue music. It's just all those typical you know, editing language things. But then when it came to this film, we quickly realized that, oh, we are really boxed in, literally boxed in the edit, because we can't cut this bit because then she's suddenly across the other side of the room, and then that doesn't, and it really ruined the flow. So we had to be really meticulous in the editing stage, and use music and sound to help us push through certain sections. And it was really, really tricky. Again, it was a great exercise, but we are super excited to make a film that we can cut to a new scene. That'd be great.
But again, it's like, it's one of those things where you don't learn that at any iteration of a film school, just because films are so expensive to do. And that's something that came from it being a feature film length. Yeah, how we were setting out to do it in real time on location, but you can't just kind of go and make a feature film, you know, with a class of people. So it's kind of like, in our case, film school is fantastic for dynamics, like interacting in stressful situations and lack of sleep with your fellow crew members and stuff like that. And then it's like, you know, they're just hard lessons we had to learn that we wouldn't have been able to learn if we hadn't kind of just gone out and done it. So but yeah, a challenge.
Yeah, I can imagine. So with the production process in terms of the shoot itself, were you guys looking more at a storyboard format, or were you kind of on the day looking around, okay, let's maybe shoot there, we haven't thought of that before, or was it a combination?
We storyboarded pretty heavily. That doesn't mean some things shifted, but by nature of, look, we've kind of, that's how, with short films, and this might evolve over time, but with short films, we love to storyboard before we get into it, because it's just, you know, a really safe way to experiment with different visual versions of the film when there's not a whole bunch of crew and you're not spending heaps of money per minute. It's just a really safe space to play around with it. With this film, because of the nature of it being all in one location and all in a small box, we kind of felt that it was important to preemptively work out for each point in the film and tonally where we were trying to go, the most interesting way of using the camera, so it wasn't kind of the same thing repetitively, but also it was really important for us to not fall into kind of an insecure feeling and overly be fancy with the camera. That was a big thing for us as well. And it's kind of like when you're going back each and every day and filming multiple things of two people sitting at a table, or multiple scenes of two people standing in the kitchen, it's really easy to go, oh, we keep shooting the same thing. But being able to, for us, and this is not everyone's process, but for us being able to work with our amazing cinematographer, Max Corkindale, and kind of refer back to that initial intention that was in the storyboards and go, no, we can trust the process that in between this, you know, other visual things happen, so the audience won't feel like, oh, we've just seen the same shot. So it was kind of just our kind of map to where we wanted to be at what point. Because of course, filmmaking, even though we're filming fairly in order, you know, we would shoot something from the last bit while we're in that room.
That's right.
We're filming the opening scene. So
you would easily get lost without it.
Actually, this one was quite heavily storyboarded.
Congratulations to you both again. I hope this thing gets legs and just keeps on going. And I look forward to seeing what you guys put up next.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's great to talk to you.